Okay guys, the rainy season is starting to kick in. It rained yesterday and it's planning on raining tomorrow, probably next week. It's just going to get worse and worse. It's a beautiful day out right now and I thought it's time to stretch out my tarps and my hammock. Double check that everything that I want to keep with them is there, because I have used them a couple times this summer. And I thought you might like to take a look at my two primary tarps and my hammock setup, along with some extra stuff that I include with it. So we're gonna basically dump these bags out that I keep with each item, and then we're gonna probably attach one end to the fence and I'll stretch them out, and then I'll take them off the ridge lines if they're on ridge lines, and maybe I'll stake them out and give you a look at them. So let's do that now. Probably going to go out of view, but I'll readjust everything. Okay guys, I got these three things all stretched out so you can see how they actually deploy out of the stuff sacks that I use. And you can see this one's pretty long. It's rigged diagonally along the ridge line, so I think it's about a 12 or 15 foot rectangular tarp, so it's a pretty big one. The next one is a square 10 by 10, rigged diagonally as well. And then we have the hammock. And I'm going to pull the skins off the hammock while I've got this camera running. You can see they just slide back, and then they allow the hammock to kind of hang freely. Now, I don't have the hammock overfly unpacked yet. It's in one of these other bags. And the reason for that is that this heavy duty tarp and this tarp, this one's too heavy. This one's just far too big for, you know, an emergency tarp when I'm just day hiking out in the woods. So I'm going to redeploy the hammock rainfly as an emergency tarp, because it packs up really small, and then I'll be able to put that in with my hiking kits for the next 6 months, basically, until the weather turns nice enough again to go out into some longer, you know, woods hikes. Okay guys, I got everything stretched out and organized, and I figured I would stake out the tarps diagonally and leave them on the ridge lines. It's just going to be easier for me when it comes to packing up. But I'm going to give you a little overview of the 4 pieces of gear that I have here and the accessories that I use. Now, I've got a stake down here and a couple of toggles, prusik lines. I'm not going to bother to explain all that. That's all to do with ridgeline design. But you can see it's a pretty long piece of paracord. This ridgeline is a 50 footer, but that only gives me about 10 feet of line here to go around a big tree, another 10 feet of space to the end of the tarp, and then another 10 feet of space from the end of the other tarp, or the other end, and then another 10 feet to go along another tree. So there isn't really, you know, a lot of spare cordage here for the west coast anyway. Maybe if you were in the eastern woodlands you could get away with, I think most guys are probably using a 30-foot ridge line. But anyway, as we come along, this thing here is a loofah from the dollar store, and I've repurposed it by cutting it open and using it as a tarp skin. Now this is such a large tarp I think it's about a 9 by 14 or something like that. I use two tarp skins cut in half, one on each end, and they meet up in the middle when I'm packing it up. So you can see that this is a very, very large tarp, and it's a rectangular one, 9 by 14. This is a Mountain Equipment Co-op sill nylon tarp, and it really makes a great secondary kind of rain fly. If you have like a primary tarp shelter made out of something like this, and then you want to put a secondary rain fly over top to cover your, cooking area or whatever you're doing, something like that, then something like this makes sense. Or you could use it just as a sunshade or something in the summer, but I'll be honest, a rectangular tarp is not the way to go, guys. They're very difficult to do tarp sets with. Now, as accessories for this tarp, I've got a good set of, a full good, I think there's 12 stakes in here or something. It's overkill, but you don't want to be short. And they're all set up with toggles, easier to use, fast to deploy, high vis, less difficult to lose them. And then I have a spare 50-foot ridge line. Just a typical straight ridge line, 50 feet long, as a spare. Then I have, there's the size, 9.5 by 12.5. Anyway, I have 10 pre-cut guy lines to use with this tarp. And then I have, doesn't say how many, these are 30-inch long utility cords for making fire cooking tripods or any number of uses around camp. And then this kit, which I'm not going to stretch out, is a heavy duty, I think it's about, 1,500 or 2,500 pound breaking strength. It's also a 50-foot heavy-duty ridge line with all the extra accessories, some pulleys, some rappel rings, and some shorter utility cords in a second bag. And that allows me to actually convert this tarp to an open top hammock for summer use. And I've practiced with that, and it makes a really good hammock. You can set it up big enough to hold 2 people if you want, you and your wife or your girlfriend, or just one person. And it takes a bit of practice, but you can set yourself up a really great hammock with a tarp like this. However, this is not a tarp that I want to be carrying in the winter if I go out for a hike. So that's a look at my 9.5 by 12.5 guide tarp. Okay, it's staked out over here. This is my primary survival tarp. This is the snake skin or tarp skin. This is a 9.5 by 9.5 heavy duty tarp sold by AquaQuest, which happens to be here on Vancouver Island, north of me a couple hours. And I bought this one a couple of years ago, I guess. This is what I'd call my primary survival tarp because it's gonna stop every amount of rain you might get. Now, to go with this kit, I've also got a good set of high-vis pegs, full set. I have 8 30-inch long utility cords pre-cut, and I have 14 guy lines. And then I also have another extra heavy duty ridge line made from utility cord with a couple of carabiners and rappel ring pulley. And this is in case you want to set up something, you know, sort of semi-permanent, I guess. And then of course I've got an AquaQuest stuff sack to put it in. And this is breathable at the bottom end, so if you put it in wet, in theory it's supposed to dry out a little bit. Okay, we're on to number 3. This is my Hennessy hammock, and this is an older design. And I just have it stretched out here on the ground to let you see that it's not perfectly symmetrical one side or the other. It's kind of a offset diamond shape. And then I've got a couple of homemade heavy duty extra long tree straps for our, you know, giant trees out here on the coast, and a set of pegs which I've used to hold them out to the ground right now. And then over here I have 4 utility cords and 4 guy lines, and then I have a spare set of 4 guy lines and 4 utility cords, mainly just so you have some extra cordage in camp. And then I've got 2 stuff sacks that go with that. And then over here, staked out on the ground, is the rain fly for the hammock. But I'm going to repurpose the rain fly because it's so light and packs up so small. It's good for my day hikes, and it'll work throughout the entire winter if I want to have some kind of a tarp shelter with me. So this one, I've got a 50-foot ridge line. I've got 8 guy lines, a little stuff sack. This is a plastic 5x7 tarp, just a cheap one that you can buy at a hardware store to use as a ground cloth. And then over there I've got a set of pegs for it. So this setup right here will be the one that I'll have in my pack for the winter for any short hikes that I might go on, or hunting trips, stuff like that. The hammock is going to get put away permanently for the winter because hammocking is a totally different world, guys. If you're not truly educated on how to use hammocks, you'll freeze your fucking ass off. Even on hot summer days, you'll end up freezing your ass off at nighttime. And then this one over here, I'll have packed up in case I want to go on a special hike where I want to have, you know, a better shelter with me, or the possibility of a better shelter. And then that one will be packed up as well, and I don't really have any intent of using it throughout the winter, but if I had to evacuate town due to, you know, earthquake, or, you know, summertime, it's forest fires, you know, this is a good one to take because at least you can get the sun off you and you can sit underneath it and cook a meal. So now that I got them all stretched out, I'm gonna pull the pegs and wrap them all back up and put them in their stuff sacks and call it good. Have a great day, guys. Mike out. All packed up. my emergency winter shelter and ground sheet, my hammock, my heavy duty survival tarp, my rectangular guide tarp, and a couple spare stuff sacks.